All right, welcome back to the Micro Frontend Conference 2024. We've actually already reached our last talk of track 2. Yeah, pretty sad. But I would say last but not least, I would like to welcome Juan Carlos to the stage. Welcome, Juan.
Hi, Alex.
Hi, how are you doing? How are you doing?
All right.
Perfect. Just a quick introduction. He's a technical leader at Playbox. He's a passionate software engineer with over a decade of immersion in software engineering. And throughout this time, he gained profound experience in front-end development and clean architecture. And that's also where his interests lie in. He has a strong affinity for clean coding practices and enhancing developer experiences. And in his talk, we will gain insights from his hands-on experience with Micro Frontends and the migration to a new architecture, basically. And we will also explore the nuances of adopting Micro Frontends tailored to the specific needs of your projects and organization. Very excited, Juan. The stage is yours. Enjoy.
Thanks, Felix, for that great introduction. So are you seeing the presentation now? Yes?
Yeah, we do. Perfect.
Yeah, okay.
Looks awesome.
Okay, so welcome all. Bienvenidos a todos. Here we are to talk about the path from Monolith to Micro Frontend. As Felix says, I am Juan Carlos Vargas, technical lead at Playbox, and I am a software engineer that studied at University of Caldas here in Colombia. I have some experience initially as co-founder for the stack. I work some with mobile, frontend. In the last few years, I have been working on varying developer experience and user experience on the frontend side. So I enjoy also out my work, working with software. I still like software. Dancing, practicing some martial arts, and reading. The real start is important to know that this is a personal view based on my own experience, an abstraction for reference, and collaboration with others, and is not directly related with my current work. So let's start. The objective of this talk is to see the context of our monolith, understand the pros and the challenges we have with the monolith. Then we're going to focus our attention in distributed systems. In this case, in the front end, as we call them, microfrontends. And last but not least, we're going to see some strategies that can help us into the migration into this new type of architecture. So let's start with our purpose. And the purpose of software is to enhance user lives, to give business values. And there's a lot of tools out there that help us with this. These tools are created with excellent patterns that help us to achieve our objective by having in a single application all of our code, our backend and our frontend, probably some queries. They will be in a single unit of deployment, as we call them, monolith applications. And monolith applications are great. They let us scale fast with IC debugging and testing, and let us have consistency into our code. The communication in the first instance with our monolith application is great because we only need to see one application. And the collaboration between developers also goes okay. With a single unit of deployment, we only need to focus in that application. The thing with software and with business is that business starts growing, and the path of growth never ends. With growth, we have challenges with teams. As the application grows over time, we will have new roles, different seniority of developers, new engineer managers, new probably product owners, and your business and application will grow. And if you are doing the things well, the growth will be fast. And with fast growth, we increase the risk of creating complex systems. As Conway's laws suggest us, the system and the type of communication of our organization match each other and reflects. So we can start adopting some cultural coupled practices in our organization. The characteristics of these coupled systems could be in technical and impact organization. In technical perspective, mostly in frontend, as we change a lot of stacks. Once we were programming all of our things in jQuery, then React, Vue, Svelte, and I don't know which will the future framework for tomorrow. The challenging with this, while our applications start growing, is that we need to migrate our application. It's really difficult to stay in a single stack, and this migration is painful. With the growth of this application, we're going to start experiencing some slow times. As our application is big, our build process will take more time, and our pipelines will be slower. One of the characteristics of coded applications is that when we change something small in one part of our code, we will reflect that change in other domains, and we will see some issues that we don't expect. So our organization can take the decision of making a lot of automations to avoid that failures, but it's really hard to avoid failures in a coded systems. Our releases start to be painful, and they delay over time. And this definitely can impact the organization culture. As big the system you need to understand, big the failures you can create. The side effects will cause and can cause that some of your developers and some of your teams have a culture of fear and a lack of ownership on those models of the system that are legacy and no one wants to touch, because if they touch them, they can break all the systems. Processes like agile processes and other checklists that you will start to need to cover after you put a code that you make on your local stage into production will start emerging in your culture. So a lot of bureaucratic parts will be there. And I don't have anything in front of agile methodologies. But when we lose the focus to deliver business value, this really starts lowering our capacity to innovate and to go further in our software challenges. So how we can achieve, how we can entail the technical and organizational coping practices to get to another stage and continue growing. If we face a big application and we need to split and we need to see how we can achieve the challenge of don't damage the entire application because small changes, probably the answer is closer as we think it. If we cover this big application as you cover some problems in your life, and you start seeing that big application and start splitting it into smaller pieces where you can focus your attention and grow, you can start applying an old strategy called divide and conquer. So you can have your big application splitting in smaller domains, and that domains can be the objective and the ownership of specific teams. In these cases, this team can start taking specialization of the domains and taking ownership if they break or not their part of the application. If we remove the communication between these teams and these domains, we can success, because if one change in one part of the domain won't affect the other domains. This will have a change in our organization. For this, in a change of organization, we can introduce new types of architecture. In this case, we call them distributed systems. And distributed systems are great, as we call them in the front end as micro frontends. That's why I will start talking more about monolith and micro frontends and not from monolith to micro frontends. Because getting from one type of architecture to the other is not as easy as removing and putting a piece of block. Sure, you will have your monolith for a long time, and will be so expensive to migrate all at once. There is strategy for that. Stronghold pattern suggests us that over time, we can continue to use this monolith application, and the new code and the new things we can start making in the new type of architecture, as we call them, micro frontends. So in the first instance, we will have an entire big monolith application, but over time, we'll start creating our new features and our new views in micro frontend applications. So here, we're going to see 3 implemented strategies, and at the end, some tips that can help us during the migration. The first one is using the tools that we already have, using the monolith to load micro frontends or single place applications. This will let us to have independent deployments for that applications. The second one is how we can separate the responsibility on mounting and routing in a separate application called shell application, and how in the third one we can see how we can integrate this shell application into our current architecture. So let's start with the first one. The first one is suggest us to continue using the monolith as we use it, but instead of adding more code in this big monolith, we will create a logic in a side project with an independent deployment and own it by independent team. In this case, we will load that single page application into our monolith. The process of this is that we can have a quick POC of a micro frontend first approach architecture. You will have independent deployment for each micro frontend, but there is some trade-offs here. The thing is that couplet with the monolith would maintain, and you will have again that relationship of your micro frontend and your monolith. You probably have some conflict with the styles of your monolith and with the styles of your micro frontend. The performance won't be the best because in this case we don't have anything that can be in charge of the usage of shared modules. And this is not scalable because you will need to add a new view in your monolith applications for each micro frontend you have out there. For understand better this strategy, we will have an example. When a user wants to get into micro frontend 1, they will put in the URL the micro frontend 1 resource. So the monolith will return us the template for that micro frontend 1, which will go and looks in our external storage the logic for that micro frontend, and we will render that micro frontend in our browser. This operation will be the same over and over for each micro frontend that we have. So the next extra strategy will be about composition and routing outside this monolith. The application of Django of this strategy is not so hard. We have now views, we have URLs, patterns, and we will have a template here to load that resource of micro frontend. So let's go to the second strategy, that is using a shell for composition and routing. And this will involve to create another application with a simple logic. Our shell application will be in charge to download a micro frontend catalog that could be as simple as having a key value of the URL and the origin of that micro frontend resource. You can put even here version and make it probably some more complex to handle other things, but for this example, let's use it as this JSON is it. So on each URL change, we'll look at this catalog and compare the URL with the catalog, and if we find a match, we will load that single page application resource, and we will load it inside our browser. In other case, we'll show an unknown error. How to integrate the shell monolith to the current architecture? One strategy can be to introduce this shell application into our current monolith. The other one is using routing on the edge to load the monolith or the shell application. There probably could be other ones. I have seen some examples that they take the monolith and load it inside the shell application, but by iframes. So will depends all in your context and in your current scenario of the organization. Let's see the first one. With the first one, it's really good because now we don't have multiple entries on our monolith to get our micro frontends. We only have one. And this is great. Make us available to use some of the monoliths features that we already use. Probably authentication. Hopefully you are not using global variables, but if you are using your global variables, you have access to that variables on your micro frontend. And definitely you will use all the benefits of the shell. That is like using shared dependencies in a better way. With this shell application, we can start varying the performance of our microfrontends and the load and mounting of those. Some of the contrasts of the cons will be that we still coupled with the monolith. And definitely we will have another layer on our architecture called the shell application. For better understanding of this strategy, we will have in our monolith an entry for all of our microfrontends called views. For then on, we'll load the shell application. We will fetch the logic outside of the monolith. This will go for a catalog JSON or an endpoint that you have for the microfrontend catalog. Looks for that microfrontend on the URL and compare if we have a match. It will get the microfrontend and load it in the browser. This operation will be the same for all of other microfrontends. And if you see here, we are not using more the monolith for fetching microfrontends, only for the first load. The other strategy is using the routing on the edge to load monolith and shell application. With this, finally, we are out of the monolith because the edge will help us to redirect our users to a specific shell application module. Some of the cons here is that we will have extra costs because of this edge function. And we will have another layer to maintain in the edge. Some considerations here is that if you are not using tokens for your authorization, you will need to implement tokens on your system. And you won't have available the global variables that you have in your monolith. Probably for this, you will need to implement some headers and footers so the user have the same experience when they see the monolith and they see the shell application. If you are gonna make this as components, I suggest you to use web components. Let's understand the flow of this. In this case, when we make a request, we won't go directly to the monolith. Instead, we're gonna go to the edge. In the edge, we will have a logic that will go to see and download the shell application HTML page. And with this, we will continue as we have seen in the previous stages, going for the catalog, comparing the URL with our catalog, and fetching that microfrontend in the CDN. And the user will have there our microfrontend outside of the monolith. Great. Now, for other cases, we'll set our CDN to load our current monolith infrastructure. And there you have it, a way to load our microfrontends outside from the monolith, but using the legacy code that you are not using, that you don't need to update frequently in your monolith. The implementation of this in a Lambda function of AWS is not as hard as it sounds. You need a handler. You need to compare your URI with a specific view that you want to for the entry for all the microfrontends. If it matches, you will load the shell origin, in this case, an HTML. Otherwise, you will download your application load balancer or whatever infrastructure you have for your monolith. So for this, in this state, we have ended with examples or ways to cover from monolith to distributed application. So let's see some tips that are useful during the migration. Definitely try to define a design system and a component library before you start the migration to this micro-frontend strategy, because you will want to maintain the same look and feel over all your applications. And if you don't have this before you start to separate your view, you will have a lot of headaches with this. Other advice here is that try to use web components and avoid vendor locking for that component library and design system. Because in the future, you don't know if you are continue working with your current framework. And if you have a match and a dependency with that vendor locking, let's suppose you select a specific web components, a specific component library with React, you will need to refactor all your views to don't use that React application, or probably you will be dependent on that specific application supports the new version of React. So if you can use web components, no matter if you are making from scratch or using a feeder library, go for web components. If you are using and you are creating from scratch your component library, distribute it as npm package with versions. Probably you are making this process at the same time, so it's better to use versioning so your teams don't have unexpected changes on the components and probably issues at runtime. It's better to happen at build time. And think in performance from the beginning, so you end with a big library with a long, like a lot of components there, very heavy, that need to be loaded in each micro frontend if they use different versions. Keep it simple. Another question I see around there is which tool to use for the shell application. There are more. I will cover here two of those: Module Federation and single SPA. Module Federation is great for Webpack 5. Probably you can have some troubles with Byte, and it's really good to reuse modules and to share modules between different JavaScript applications at runtime. Webpack is not created for cover the shell application needs. They don't have a routing for this, so you will need to make something for routing on your shell application. As Module Federation said, they are the orchestrator. I have found also some challenges with this, especially working with Vue, or if you need to handle nested route between different stacks. Almost all the examples out there with Module Federation are with React, consuming React applications, or probably some Vue components, and its work as perfect. But if you need to work with a specific micro frontend that have routes and the orchestrator also have routes, you will have the challenge. So this Module Federation is a powerful tool that requires great responsibility, because if you don't put some limits on the sharing of those dependencies, you will end with a big graph of micro frontends that shares modules between them, and you can probably end in an anti-pattern called distributed monoliths or distributed coupled systems. From the other side, single SPA is a really simple library that is really good at mounting and unmounting single-page applications. They provide already a routing that helps you to mount and unmount your applications. Only the downside of this library is that the maintainer is not as active at Module Federation, but the library works really good. As a suggestion, if you need to support multiple frameworks, or you are using Vue application and single page application, you can go for single SPA. If you are using React and your micro frontend will use React, go for Module Federation. They have a release called 2.0, and they have solved a lot of problems they experienced in the 1.0. So I know they are gonna see for solutions for these challenges they have there. In the scenario where you need to pick monorepo or multi-repo, they both have pros contrasts. Probably monorepo will have easier collaboration across project and easier management dependencies. some cons of this is that you will have a more challenges on your continuous integration and continuous deployment pipelines. And this, as Module Federation, if you don't put some boundaries on the sharing of dependencies of this monorepo, you will end with a distributed Micro Frontend system. Because if you have all your files in the same repository, the temptation to have the usage of a common library can be big. With multi-repo, could be simpler because you only need to manage one application. They are isolated from each other, so that risk about like consuming shared dependencies without npm package is removed. And there is some cons about you will end with a bunch of repositories. And sure, you will have a lot of duplication. It's not bad. Trade-off, picks what you like. If you are going to go with monorepo, I suggest you to use NX. It's a build system with build tooling and advanced CI capabilities, and it will help you with this process. Talking about CI, you haven't created a CI pipeline for your frontend, go and do it. But don't let each developer or each team decide how they want to deploy this to production. Try to abstract that for developers so that they can focus their attention on giving value to the user. And you can give them a pipeline so that in each merge to the master branch, they can get that feature to production in a short period of time. There's a library called CloudFront Hosting Toolkit created by AWS, where they have a great management of hashing on the files. And this hash will be very beneficial for you in the performance for your CDN and cache management. When we talk about cache, if you are not using a CDN or you are not configure already the cache policy, try to use it. This will improve your performance and reduce the latency of your application. Go and look your TTLs and cache control headers so you can have benefit of the cache in your browser. Last but not least, try to keep focus on the problem you want to solve. Don't pick this architecture because they are talking about them in the internet all around. Only get into it if you see problems that you want to face it. Do not stop delivering value to your users. If you're the one in charge to migrate this, like to achieve these challenges, try to use and create all the tools that you can have to achieve this new architecture without stopping the business value, delivering the business value of your developers. So have a close connection with them and do not lose the communication with your developers. You need to communicate what is the things that are solving this type of architecture and reduce the time that they need to spend to adapt to this new type of architecture. Here, I will show you some resources that can help you to understand more about Micro Frontends and other parts of the things we have covered on this talk. With these two books, you will understand more about Micro Frontends. With Accelerate, you will understand more how to focus in things that importance more to deliver value to the users, how to measure that things. With team topologies, you're gonna know or you are gonna understand how we can distribute teams and communication between them. And looking for some of the practices outside there in other industries can help you to adopt better practices in yours. So thanks for your time, and I am here open to questions if you have any questions.
Thank you so much, Juan, for your talk. It was very informative. And thanks for presenting your hands-on experiences with migrating to Micro Frontends. I think it was very valuable for the audience.